everyone. Welcome to the financial aid Zoom event for your new student orientation. I think we'll go ahead and get started. So just a few reminders. Please keep your microphones on mute throughout the presentation or discussion. You can utilize the chat feature at any time. We're actually going to spend most of our time on question and answer. And so I do encourage you to submit questions, or you can also unmute yourself to ask if there's a lull. And then this is recorded, so just as a heads up to you all. So a little bit just to plug the Student Success Advocate. So my name is Laura Rowley, and I am a Student Success Advocate here at the U. If you aren't really sure what that means, our job is basically to assist you in making the most out of your time at the U, and being successful in whatever ways or however you define that. We're generalists, so we can basically connect you to a lot of different resources and opportunities across campus. It can feel like a very big place with a lot going on. And so navigating that, it can be a bit of a challenge. And so basically we can help with that process. If it's jobs, internships, scholarships, wanting to succeed in your classes, right? Bolstering your resume, financial challenges, housing insecurity, food insecurity, kind of anything and everything under the sun where we can connect you to resources to help your time at the U. It's kind of what we do. If you are interested in learning more, you can go to our website, ssa.utah.edu. We have bios for each of the student success advocates you could read, and all of our cell phone numbers and emails are listed there as well. So that's where you can find out ways to contact us. Without further ado, I will introduce. Today we are joined by Kathy Beecher. She's an assistant director in the Financial Aid and Scholarships Office. And so she's the expert in most things that you'll be asking questions about today. But I'll jump in if there's other things that I can add as well. Kathy, do you want to introduce yourself a little too?
Sure. I am Kathy Beecher. I'm the Assistant Director of Client Services. What that means is if you have a complaint, it will probably come through to me first. I also supervise all of the financial aid counselors, the loan manager. We also have a program manager, and what the program manager does is she manages financial aid for graduate programs. So we've got a team, there's about 15 of us that share the duties. And so if you need help, this is where you go.
Awesome. So I do have a handful of the questions that some folks who registered submitted. So we can start there. If you have any additional questions, again, you can drop it in the chat if you like, and we'll make sure to get to that. But one of the first questions that was submitted is, what are the financial aid options that students can opt for if they're eligible for a Pell grant? So Kathy, I'll let you.
Okay, I'm not sure what you mean by what are your options, but the Pell Grant is what we call an entitlement. That means that if the FAFSA application says you are eligible for a Pell Grant, and you are otherwise eligible, and I'll explain that in a minute, then you don't need to do anything except submit that FAFSA application. You don't have to do any extra paperwork other than that, unless your file is selected for verification, which means we may need copies of your taxes or other things. If your FAFSA application comes in telling us that the central processing system has questions about the information that you put on. Another common question is, why was I selected for verification? The federal processor is required by federal law to verify a minimum of 33% of the applications that they receive. And usually it's just a wild card. Just the luck of the draw. The other way that you can be selected for verification is if there is conflicting information on your FAFSA application, then the central processing system will select you that way. Or if we get your information in and we have a question, something seems different, but usually it's totally random. So your options are Pell is an entitlement, so you get Pell no matter what. The other thing is, if you're Pell eligible, there are other grants that you're applying for through that FAFSA application. And we are not allowed to say that that money is first come, first serve, but basically it's first come, first serve because each college or university gets a limited amount of money for what is called campus-based grants. The biggest campus-based grant is SEOG, or you may see it as FSEOG. The F just stands for federal. But what the SEOG is oh, good grief, student education opportunity grant, or something to that effect. I've only been doing this 30 years. But that's the main one. Some of the other campus-based grants are HES, and that's kind of new, and I don't remember what it stands for. I left school financial aid and went to loan servicing for 4 years, and I'm just now getting back into school financial aid. I don't know what that one is because it's newer than when I was at my last school. Also, the state of Utah, and usually most other schools that you have that you can go to, will have state grants. For Utah, we have the UEG grant. There are some special UHEA funds. Both of those pools of money come from Utah Higher Education Assistance Authority. And that's basically, it's the Board of Regents. It's the legislature. All of that money is voted in by the legislature each year. So those are your opportunities as far as grants are concerned. The Pell grant is the first one. Most of those other grants, you need to be eligible for Pell as well. Okay.
Just to follow up on that and maybe put some of this in context, could you briefly maybe explain the different types of aid that are available? Grants obviously are money you don't pay back, but there's loans, there's scholarships, there's work study.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, first of all, you need to know that we will always consider you for grant aid before we get into any funds that you need to pay back. So Pell is the big one. The other things are those state grants. Those we will consider next. The next thing that we will consider is the first of what is called self-help aid, and that is college work study. College work study is an amazing program. It's where you can get a job on campus, and the federal government grants you X amount of dollars to earn over fall and spring. And occasionally, if you've got a job that you really like and you want to work during the summer, sometimes we can get you extra money to cover during summer. The maximum that you can earn over fall and spring is a total of $5,000. Now, that money is paid to you directly as a paycheck. It doesn't go towards your tuition. So just like I get paid, just like Loretta gets paid, you'll get a paycheck. I think it might be just once a month, but it may be twice a month. So that is the first of the self-help aid. I will tell you that the college work study program got me started. I started out as a work study student in the financial aid office at Salt Lake Community College, stayed there through my associate's degree, transferred up here to the U, and worked in student employment while I was here at the U, and then I was hired. My major was neuroscience, and well, actually my major was psychology, but there was a neuroscience professor that offered me a job. a work-study job. That changed my life because I changed my major to neuroscience, and it opened a whole new world. Oddly enough, it also led me back to financial aid. So I could not advertise work-study better. It's half our office started out as work-study students. It's an amazing program. So the next are the student loans. The first one is a subsidized student loan. That is a need-based student loan. That means that the less money that you make, or you and your parents make, your greater chance of getting a subsidized loan. What the subsidized means is, while you're in school, at least 6 credit hours, the federal government is paying the interest payments for you, so no interest is accruing on the loan. So the next loan, and pretty much everybody is eligible for the unsubsidized loan. The difference is the federal government isn't paying the interest payments for you, so interest is accruing on the loan even while you're in school. I will tell you that if you end up having to take a student loan to help pay for tuition, the upcoming loan interest rate starting for fall semester is the lowest that we have seen it since, I believe, 2009. I think it's around 3%, and I just don't remember what the exact dollar amount is because I'm not in my office with my poster on the wall. But so if you are stuck taking a student loan, this is a good time to do it because the interest rates have not been lower in a very long time. Student loans are not a scary thing. The one thing that you need to remember is it's up to you to be responsible for it. Borrow only what you need. What we will do as a financial aid office is we will offer you student loans up front. And the one thing that I want to encourage you not to do is I don't want you to see that we have offered you $3,000 in a student loan and the first thing you think of is, this is great, I can buy a big screen TV. No, that is not why you take out a student loan. You need to repair your car because you can't get back and forth to school without it. That's a good reason to borrow a student loan. You need a new computer. That's a good reason. But you don't want to use it to party or anything silly like that because you need to pay it back. I am saying this right now not only as a financial aid officer, but as a former loan servicer. Mainly, I collected on student loans, and a lot of them were defaulted student loans. Do not borrow unless you absolutely have to. Sometimes scholarship applications will require you to have a FAFSA application as well. The 4 Utah Scholarship, which is our newest scholarship, requires you to do the FAFSA application up front, and you have to be Pell eligible. So if you want to get scholarships, whether you want to use federal aid or not, still do the FAFSA. If you don't use it, it just sits there in cyberspace and nobody cares. Nobody's ever going to see it. So, okay.
Awesome, thank you. One of the questions we just had in the chat is, how do we get all of these grants? If a student has over $5,000 of unmet need per semester, and they've done a FAFSA, right, and applied for scholarships, how is the grant also a possibility?
Okay, this is where the first come, first serve comes into play. Every October 1st, the new application for FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. The address to get that application is www.studentaid, all one word, .gov. Make sure you get into .gov. There are other websites. There's studentaid.org, studentaid.com. Studentaid.org is actually a decent site, but it's not how you apply for federal aid. Anything else is going to be a scam. The one thing that you need to understand is when you do that FAFSA application, if you end up on a site that asks you to pay them to do your FAFSA application, it's a scam. Do not do it. Make sure you are in .gov. So, as I said, they are first come, first serve. Each school gets a limited amount of student aid. Pell Grants, we never run out of Pell Grant money. We never run out of student loan money. But SEOG, HESP, UHEA, NB-TAG, anything that is campus-based aid, SEOG, or federal work study, we do run out of that money. So the habit that you need to get into is every October 1st, do a new FAFSA for the upcoming year. The earlier you apply, the more you can be eligible for. If you do it October 1st, you're going to meet scholarship deadlines. You're going to meet all of the federal deadlines. So it's just an excellent habit for you, the student, not your parents, but you, the student, to get in the habit of. Okay.
Awesome. One of the other questions that we've had submitted during registration, is there a maximum amount of financial aid that a student can receive?
Yes, there is. There's a couple different types of maximums. The most pertinent maximum that you need to know right off is every degree has what we call a cost of attendance budget. That means how much does it cost for you to attend that degree each year? We have to, by law, report on your offer letter where we show you what your financial aid is. We are required by law to tell you what your cost of attendance budget is, and it can be very confusing. People will look at that total and they'll think there is no way I can come up with $30,000 to attend this semester. But you need to remember that that cost of attendance budget does not mean money that you are paying out of pocket. You'll notice in that budget, there's things like transportation, housing, miscellaneous, tuition and fees, that kind of thing. The one thing to remember is, other than the tuition and fees, the other components on that list are things you are already paying for. You're paying rent on your apartment, or your parents are paying a house payment. You are putting gas in your car. You're buying paper for your printer. All of that kind of stuff is things that you don't even think about spending in your daily life, but we are responsible to consider that as part of your educational expenses. So please don't look at that total and think it's money that we are expecting you to pay out. It isn't. Most of it you're already paying out without noticing. So you have a yearly cost of attendance budget. We cannot award you any type or combination of financial aid that goes over that budget. Like I said, we will give you the best aid for you first before we go into loans. So we're going to look at Pell Grants, scholarships, anything like that that you don't have to pay back before we will get into anything that you have to pay back up to that cost of attendance. Now, the other limitations are, as an undergraduate, you have, that's when you might be eligible for a Pell Grant. You have a lifetime Pell Grant eligibility of 600%. Why they didn't just make it 100%, we don't know. But basically, they decided to call it 600%. So for an undergraduate, you can get up to 600% of your yearly eligibility. Your loans also have limits. You have undergraduate loan limits. Within that, you have subsidized undergrad limits and unsubsidized undergrad limits. When you get into the graduate loans, you have a wide variety of loans. There are graduate regular loans, graduate plus loans, HEAL loans, which are for medical programs and some other programs. So you have loan limits as well.
Awesome. We did have another question from Kate. She says she's already done her FAFSA and the extra verification, and is wondering when would she find out about Pell Grants and other aid. So maybe talking about the timelines of when they find out that type of information.
Okay. Most of the processing that we do is automated. So if you completed verification on Wednesday, we know by the following Monday what your financial aid offer is. The one thing is you need to get in the habit of checking your CIS page and your University of Utah email. Those are the two ways that we're required by the Federal Education Rights and Privacy Act. That's how we have to notify you, because it's a secure way to get the information out on you. If you haven't heard from us, chances are you need to look on those two websites. So in your case, if you completed verification last week sometime, we are running packaging tonight. If you don't get an offer letter by Monday, you need to call our office so that we can check and see if there are some kind of problem. And our office phone number is, well, somebody moved my card. So if you could, Loretta, look up our office phone number and let us know, please do call us. You can also email us, but right now we get hundreds of emails a day. And while calling on the phone, you may have to wait for even up to a half hour before you get a live person. Please call a live person, because that's the quickest way we can check and get the information to you. And if there's a problem, that's the quickest way for it to be brought to our attention so we can fix it right away. But it's really a very quick process.
I would say Jared quickly found the phone number and email, so thank you for putting that in the chat.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. One of the things that I just wanted to add to that is to check all of the, like, your award letter, when that's completed. It's in your CIS account. If you click on the student homepage and go to the financial aid tile, there's a lot of options. If you want a refresher or need to figure out how to find all those things, the financial aid module on Canvas for your orientation has the visuals of how to click through and where to find all of these things if you need more information on your award letter and things like that.
That's also where you're going to find out if we have missing information that we need you to answer. That is the quickest way to find out, is logging into CIS in the student financial aid information. And there are two different tiles for financial aid. There's the student information, but there's also the student offer letter. It's no longer called an award letter. The federal government has charged us with changing it to offer letter. So make sure that you look on both of those tiles.
One of the other questions that we've had submitted, what methods are available for working and paying rent at the university?
Work study is the number one that I know. And like I said, you can earn up to $5,000. That's the only thing that actually goes through financial aid. But there are part-time job opportunities all over campus. We have restaurants. We have a bowling alley. We have all kinds of things all over campus that if you need help paying your rent or your student housing or whatever, there's got to be a job on there for you. So just look. they're all over the place.
Yeah. I will also add, so work study is a needs-based
Yes.
option. So in your FAFSA evaluation, you'll need to have an unmet need number in order for that to be something that you can be eligible for. But most part-time jobs on campus don't have that restriction, so that's also something to look at. If you are planning on living in student housing, I would also recommend checking out the Housing and Residential website. They have also student jobs available up in housing that you can also look for. So just to plug that information as well. Are there any questions? Oh, sorry.
Can I add something, Loretta? One of the great things about work study and about jobs on campus, you don't have to commute, especially if you're living on campus. That cuts your time so much. And with the work study jobs, a lot of those people that employ work study students, if there's downtime, well, like the work study students in our office, they get a lot of study time and they're paid to study while they're at work if we're kind of slow and we don't have anything for them to do right now. And that's great because they walk to their job and they can study.
Are there any other questions from folks? I have more I can ask, but I wanted to see.
I have a couple things. I'm not sure what all you have gone over with your orientation, but I hope they went over FERPA with you. Loretta, do you know how much they go over FERPA?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it might be useful to review a little. Oh, Madeline.
Madeline.
Happy to pop in. Hi folks, my name is Madeline. I work with the orientation office. If you do have access to your orientation modules, you do have some, you have a bit on FERPA in there and how to set up your, if you would like to set up like your FERPA PIN, that information can be found there. FERPA is the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act. If you need a refresher, you can just pop back into your orientation modules.
If you call us in financial aid, you have to have a FERPA PIN. We can't answer your questions on the phone without that. Also, if you email us and you email us from your Gmail or whatever, financial aid is required by law to email you back through your U of U email. Now you can link your U of U email to forward to whatever your general email is, and that's okay. But just know that everything that we send you will go to your U of U email, and that's because of FERPA. If your parents want to call in and get any of your financial aid information, you need to be sure that you have added them to your FERPA form and that they know your PIN. They can't ask those questions without it. One of the common questions that we get in our office is, if my tax information is on my student's FAFSA application, why do I just not have open access to that student's information? That's because Congress says that that information is private to your student and they must give you access to it. We're not being mean. That's a law that Congress has made.
Okay. Maybe one other general question that we can talk about a little bit. We've talked a lot about FAFSA, and hopefully some of you, or if not all, have already applied, but maybe just some of the big, I guess, details in terms of what kind of information you have to include or what requirements for including parents' financial information there might be, just as you reapply each year, knowing when those might change.
Perfect. Okay. One of the #1 questions that we get is, why is parental information required until you're 24? Way back in 1969, when the Higher Education Act was first proposed and passed, Congress decided at that time, and they re-decide every year, that if you want federal financial aid to assist you in funding your education or your students' education, they want information. They aren't asking you to pay out of pocket necessarily, but if you want taxpayer dollars, they want information. So one of the things that comes up on the FAFSA that determines what your financial aid is your EFC number, your estimated family contribution. And we have students and parents ask us all the time, well, mine is $10,000. I don't have $10,000 to pay the school. This is another thing that's very similar to the cost of attendance budget. That $10,000 or $0 or whatever your EFC is, that doesn't mean cash out of your pocket because you are already paying that anyway. You're paying rent, you're putting gas in your car, you're buying clothes, all of those things that I talked to you about with the cost of attendance. That's what that number means. And basically the reason that the parent's information or a spouse information once you get married, one of the questions we get for newlyweds is, I wasn't paid. We have what's called prior year. So if you do the application in October for 21, 22, I have to think in my head of those years, 21, 22, you will be using 2019 taxes. That's where the prior year comes from. Well, so we have students that say, hey, I was not married to my spouse in 2019. Why do I have to include them? Well, that's because we are looking at a snapshot of what your current income is. We may be getting that from a couple years ago's taxes, but we are also looking at a snapshot of what you may have available to us or to you at that time. So that's why your parents' information goes on. That's why a spouse's information goes on. I know it can be confusing, but if you ever see your information and you don't understand what it is, when we all get back on campus, you are welcome to come in and we go over it with people all the time. We can set up Xoom appointments with you or whatever, so you can ask personal questions. And Loretta, this just reminded me of something that is pertinent to students, but also to student success advocates and many other offices on campus. There are students who have very special family situations. We deal with those all the time and it's very confidential. That's another reason why FERPA is so important. So if you haven't done your FAFSA yet, because you don't live with your parents, maybe you haven't even seen your parents in 10 years, or you have a parent who is, your parents are separated, you have no idea where the other parent is. We have ways that we can deal with that, and we deal with that all of the time, very confidentially. We hear some horror stories, I'll be perfectly honest with you, but there is nothing that we cannot help you with. We can work it out. There are laws to protect you, and there are laws to help you. There are offices on campus. To be honest with you, I don't know all of them, but student success advocates do know all of them. And if you have any special circumstances, please make sure that you ask someone. And like I said, there's nothing we haven't heard before. We can fix in people that you will get is an advisor. If it's something that they can't answer, they will forward your email to the counselor emails. We have counselors that are on call every day. Once we get back into the office, we will have counselors that you can do walk-in appointments with. Eventually, since we don't know how long this is going to last, we will also have Xoom appointments. We can do Xoom appointments now on a limited basis. The reason that it's limited is mainly we don't have a system in place to set up the appointments yet. The university and our office is working on what is going to be the best way for the students to be able to set up appointments. But if you talk on the phone to one of our advisors and they believe that you need to speak to a counselor, they'll either transfer your call to the on-call counselors. If it's specialized enough or serious to where they're concerned for you, they may send you directly to me. The other thing that they may end up doing is asking you what is the best phone number that we can reach you at. The counselor or me will call you directly and talk to you, and usually we will get back to you that same day. So those are options. We can meet with you now. It's just the way to set up appointments has just not been worked out. But if you need one of us, if you have a serious situation, please feel free to tell the advisor what that situation is, and they will send you to a counselor or whoever you need to see to talk about it. That is the same with our scholarship team. They are meeting with students. So advisors first, counselors or scholarships second, and that pretty much will cover it. You usually will not have to go higher than me, because if I can't take care of it for you, there's a real problem. I better be able to take care of it. That's my job. So, okay.
Does anyone else have questions? Don't want to dominate the Okay, well, I do have another one that I wanted to ask. Given the fact, and we recognize that not everything is quite figured out in entirety for fall semester given COVID-19 and things going on, but a few scenarios that I think might be useful for students to hear about a little is what if they drop a class after they've already paid tuition, how do refunds work? Or there's also the withdraw process. So if you withdraw from a class and you get a W on your transcript, how might that work? So in terms of refunds and things, if you want to speak to that a little.
Okay. First of all, you need to understand that there is a huge difference between a drop and a withdrawal, especially with regard to financial aid. When you drop a class, there is a limited amount of time, usually the first 2 weeks, that you can drop a class. When you drop a class, that does a couple different things. It refunds the tuition for that class back to income accounting, who collects for your tuition. Now, that doesn't mean that you get that money back. If you have a Pell Grant and you drop a class, the Pell Grant will take their portion back. Pell Grants are awarded in 4 different ways, based on full-time, which is 12 credit hours on up, 3/4 time, which is 9 to 11 hours, half-time, which is 6 to 8 credit hours, and less than half-time, which is 5 and under. Not everyone is eligible for aid or for a Pell Grant at less than half-time. Pell Grant is the only one that you can get for less than half-time. Everything else you have to have at least 6 credit hours. So if you drop and you have a Pell Grant, you need to understand that that money will go back to the Pell Grant first. Now let's say that the difference between your tuition is $500. When you drop, $500 goes back, but the difference in your Pell is $1,000. we'll take $500 back and send it back to the federal government for Pell, and you might get the other refund in your account. That doesn't always happen, but it can happen. Now, withdrawals. Here is where it gets very serious. Withdrawals and failing grades count against what is called satisfactory academic progress. In order to remain eligible for federal financial aid and a lot of the scholarships, probably most of the scholarships, you need to maintain a minimum GPA of 2.0. For some scholarships, it's going to be a lot higher, but for federal financial aid, it's 2.0. You also need to maintain a completion rate of 67.77%. So that means for every class that you take, every term that you enroll in, you have to complete 67%. So now, let's say that you have attended 5 semesters and you have never failed a class and you've never taken a withdrawal. That means that you're at 100%. So if you withdraw from a class having 5 semesters of 100%, withdrawing from one class is not going to hurt you all that bad. It's when you consistently fail classes or withdraw from classes that it seriously affects your scholarships and your financial aid. If at the end of the semester you have withdrawn from all of your classes or you have failed all of your classes, it could be a combination of failing classes, taking an incomplete, and withdrawing classes, then the federal government is going to want a percentage of their money back. So withdrawing, failing, and taking an incomplete is a very serious situation. We recently, with COVID, saw students who were offered the chance to take classes as pass-fail, and that affects your satisfactory academic progress. There are things that if you have a directly related COVID incident, there's things our office can do, but you have to be able to document that it was a COVID incident. So let's forget COVID and just think about satisfactory academic progress. The first thing that we will do if you miss or if you hit those minimums, we will send you a warning. During that semester that you're on warning, you're still eligible for aid. But if you don't pass all of your classes that semester with a minimum of a 2.0, then you would not be eligible for financial aid again unless you appeal and have it approved, or you on your own attend and pay your tuition and bring your minimums up. The other thing that a lot of people don't think about with W's and incompletes and failing grades, those can affect a lot of different things. Scholarship applications for future terms and new scholarships. A lot of times, a scholarship donor will ask for your transcripts. So if they're going to see a lot of W's and incompletes or failing grades, they're not going to give you a scholarship. Also, employers, a lot of times they will have you sign a thing that says they can contact your school and get your transcripts. Are they going to want to hire you if you don't complete your classes? So you can't just think of these choices as being immediate implications. There are future implications to doing this. So before you drop your classes, withdraw, whatever, if you're worried about failing, you might want to call our office, or if we're back in the office, come and see us so that we can look at things and give you a chance to see where you're at as far as SAP is concerned. Satisfactory academic, it's SAP, okay? But we'll look at your history and we'll let you know where you're at with that.
Awesome. Are there any questions that folks want to follow up on? Just give it a second.
I know it's a lot of stuff.
It can feel like a lot. I get that too.
It can be very confusing.
I think one other, if there's recommendations that we might want to think of too, the website for the financial aid office, because we are throwing a lot of information at you right now. I would recommend just looking up the financial aid office at the University of Utah. The website should pop up. There's a rundown of all of the different types of aid and a lot of links to forms. You can also look for scholarship opportunities there. One thing that I will plug for folks who are still looking for scholarships, they recently kind of consolidated all of the campus scholarships into one system. The website is, I believe, Academic Works,
Yes.
if you taught the information. And so often it'll be one kind of centralized application process where you can then add the specific materials for a very broad range of scholarships available on campus that you can look and search through all year round. So.
Looking for scholarships is a full-time job. It takes a lot of work. And whether you are an incoming freshman or you're a senior, you should still be looking for scholarships. Some of the other things that you can do to get scholarships, have your parents check with their employers to see if they have scholarship opportunities, or also trying to think of what it's, I can't think of the name of it, but at the end of the semester, you can turn in your grades to some of these employers and they will pay you back your tuition amount. Tuition reimbursement, that's what it is. So it can help generate money term after term after term. Also, there is probably the business department has the most scholarships, but check with your employer as well. Some of the local employers that have a lot of scholarships, the Larry H. Miller Corporation, Starbucks, Walmart, pretty much any company, especially the bigger ones, will have types of scholarships for their employees or the children of their employees. So check, it's worth doing it, but you want to be shopping for scholarships all year long. And I'll tell you, if you're wanting a scholarship for the 21-22 year, October 1st is when the applications start coming out for that. So that's just a couple months away. So you need to start shopping and you need to check the scholarship websites often, because as new money comes in, new scholarships are developed, or scholarships that we thought we were out of money. The donors are being very generous right now during COVID because a lot has happened to a lot of people. And I'll tell you, the Utah community is amazing, and we have had emergency funds come in from all over the state, and it's amazing what our community is doing. So keep looking, check often.
One other I wanted to add to that, we do have an emergency fund that was created to help students impacted by COVID-19. I believe that is still right now available up through September in terms of the window for when folks can apply. So if you are at this point kind of confident about being able to pay tuition for fall, but something happens between now and the deadline, which I believe is typically the last Friday of the second week of classes.
I think so, yes.
If you run into trouble, knowing that there is an emergency fund that you can apply for, I don't know how competitive that process is, but as long as you've filled out a FAFSA, you can submit an application for the emergency fund, and some of that money is also coming from the CARES Act. So that would be a place to check out. I guess one other thing, if you can maybe speak to payment plans, or kind of what happens if you have tuition due and you're not quite able to meet whatever amount you have left, if there's kind of options that students can check out.
Yeah, the emergency funds that are coming in, the CARES Act has some stipulations to it. So some students are not eligible for that. And but a lot of the private donor money does not have the same stipulations. So as the application process goes through, and our office is the one that will award the money, but we are not really the ones that are deciding who's getting it. But what we do, what the community that is doing this does is, if there are students who have an emergency and they are eligible for CARES, we will do the money out of CARES. But let's say they are not eligible for CARES, then we will fall back on the private donations so that we're not as limited to how many people we can help. And we thought back in mid-April, we had been given about $200,000. And you can imagine that's not a lot of money for 30,000 students. And we went through that really fast and we thought, great, now what are we going to do? But the community has rallied, and we are every so often somebody sends us more money. So we don't know how far it's going to go. We don't know how long this generosity is going to last, but we are making a valiant effort to spread it as much as we can and help as many people as we can.
Awesome. So if you have any questions, feel free to maybe drop them in the chat. You can also reach out to Kathy or myself, right? The ssa.utah.edu website is where you can find my contact information as well as other SSAs. Kathy, I believe the phone number and email was dropped in the chat as well.
Yes. Yes.
If you want to contact the financial aid office. I know that this was a lot of information, so I hope it was at least helpful, but please let us know if you do have more questions.
You'll never remember all of this, so please ask again.
It is recorded, so we will be posting this to the orientation website. The same place where you signed up and registered for the event is where you can find that button will change to something that lets you watch. So if you did want to revisit some of the questions we talked about today, you can go ahead and do that.
And so our phone number is 801-581-6211. That way you've got it on film in case you forget it.
There you go.
And be patient with us in the time that it takes us to answer you, but we will get there.
Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Kathy, for being here with us too. And we look forward to meeting you all on campus come fall.
Yep. Welcome to the University of Utah.